When you're ready.
All right, we will call the meeting to order. The first thing is we are going to be convening as the Board of Equalization. And so with that, Jen, would you do roll, please?
Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Waldner.
Here.
Commissioner Thill.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson. Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for the Board of Equalization.
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review the 2019 assessment roll. And I'm going to ask Jen if she wants to address that.
Yes, please. As members of the Board of Commissioners, you also serve one time a year as the local Board of Equalization. It is your duty to hear and decide any appeals within 5 days. We did not receive any appeals this year. Also, it is the duty of this board to certify the accuracy of the assessment roll, which you have in front of you. There's 3 different books. They've been around my office for a few days. Some of you have peeked at them on your way through. You are to certify the accuracy of these assessment rolls, deliver it to the Director of Equalization on or before the 4th Monday of March, which is March 25th. We also take with that a copy of our minutes for use on their next board meetings. Okay, so if you want to take just a couple minutes to page through some of those books.
I've looked through these 2 already.
Look okay to you?
Well, you know, the printing is there, and of course, you know, anytime you're doing assessments, it's equalization. And so it's comparing, you know, homes of similar design, similar age, and so forth to each other, not necessarily, you know, exactly what it's going to sell for. And then, you know, the mill levy will be applied to the valuation. So you could have your valuation go up, but if the mill levy goes down, you could end up paying the same amount of taxes, or you could be paying slightly more or slightly less. A lot of that is governed by the state law.
That's right.
So,
and there's some of that we just can't.
right.
That can be jostled anyway for configuration that, and I want to say works against us. It makes it difficult to do the kind of things that we do.
And we,
in terms of revenue.
yep. And basically in that we leave it to the property owners because we don't take the time and research all this like they do at the county. We leave it to the property owners that if they feel that there's a discrepancy, then they come in with an appeal, and then at that point in time, you know, but if we have no appeals, you know, it means that the property owners in that, you know, may have seen a slight change or may not, and, you know.
Property owner notices went out about a month ago, right?
They did. Yes, they did. You know, so.
That's such a confusing thing when it's the valuation of a home, and the property assessment, property, and then the mills, they don't always line up going in the same direction.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of appeals, but I think we've had one every year. I've been on the commission anyway.
Yeah.
I don't ever recall not having one.
We had one last year.
We
Minutes
did.
stated that we had one last year. I remember a couple years we had 3 or 4 in here. So it's, and FYI, yes, those assessment notices must be mailed by the county on March 1st. So we've had them a few weeks.
Do you need a motion on this?
Yes,
You
please.
do.
After.
Quick question. I heard this one other time. Do you know how many properties we have in the city limits? It's like 2,800, something like that.
I don't know that I can sure find that out.
I think you're in the
Give
right
Rick a call
neighborhood. I've heard
tomorrow.
a number similar to that in the past,
Yeah.
but I don't know it exactly either.
Okay.
Properties
just
within the
curious.
city limits.
Yeah.
I'll find out and report
Like
back to you.
how many established dwellings?
you know, it's,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, wow.
you know, or as opposed
I
to
looked at the one.
business, not business, but just we look for plotters.
We have about 2,500 services for utilities.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that number. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so after that brief review, if you don't have any changes to recommend, I would ask that you make a motion to approve the 19 assessment roll. And I'll
So
take care of
moved.
the rest.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we will now move into the Board of Commissioners. And I'll call the meeting to order. Jen, would you take roll, please?
Commissioner Waldner,
Here.
Commissioner Thel,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Corbin,
Here.
and Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for this evening.
Move to approve the agenda as set forth.
Second.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no appearances or acknowledgements, is there anything anyone wants removed from the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no old business under new business. First reading and set a date of hearing of ordinance number 1607, amend Appendix B zoning, fitness facilities. And I'm going to ask Chad if you would address that, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commission. Just briefly, if I may, I'll talk about what's in the agenda packet. Ordinance 1607 itself, a notice for a hearing in 2 weeks from tonight. I think it's April 1st, it should be, yes. And the draft Planning Commission proceedings from March 12th, where this item was discussed. And this is a change to the zoning ordinance. The process for that is there's a hearing before the Planning Commission where they would make a recommendation, and then it comes over to the City Commission where there's a first and a second reading. Typically, the second reading is also where you have a hearing as well, and that process is talked about in state statute, but also in our ordinance as well. So that's what we've used for modification of our ordinances over the last couple times. So what this ordinance does is this adds the use of fitness facilities to the ordinance in the business districts. Currently, there's nothing in there that clearly states what it is. Typically, the use, how zoning is allowed, is there's principal permitted uses for each district. So somebody can simply proceed with those, whether it's on the basis of a building permit or switch of use or so on, without having to, they can proceed with those without having to go through any type of other approval through the Planning and Zoning Board or anything. And then the next is a conditional use, and that's where they have to fill out a form and have a hearing and go before the Board of Adjustment and present what it is they're doing. That's a conditional use. If it's not on either one of those, it can't be done. And looking at some of the business districts, it doesn't look like this is clearly laid out that they can do these. Right. And so that is why we've had calls from time to time over the years, and we thought it's time to maybe just address this and have it be more clear. Ambiguity doesn't help anything. There's cause for consternation and arguments and such like that, so we did that. So I proposed this to the Planning Commission. They had a pretty good discussion about it. How we've opted to incorporate these in this proposed ordinance is in the two districts that by virtue of the name and description of them are closer to residences or housing or residential districts, being the neighborhood business district and the mixed-use residential emphasis district. Those two, these fitness facilities are incorporated into here as a conditional use. So they would have to fill out a form and come before the board if they wanted to do it in those two districts. However, for the central business districts, the downtown area, and the general business district, now that's in several different parts of town where that's located. These would be able to come in as just a principal permitted use. So I won't continue to talk about this unless there's questions, but we have, that's the proposal, how to incorporate these in the ordinance. And then we also have I believe, yes, we put a definition of what a fitness facility is to make that clear as well. So I'd stand by for questions.
So we're looking to make this a principal activity in the business?
it will be allowed, basically, whether it by conditional use or principal permitted use. 2 zones offer it one way, and 2 districts
Okay, yeah.
offer it one way, 2 districts offer it the other way.
And it's addressing the, you know, it not being in the
Right.
ordinance at all. And the ordinance being elusive enough that it's very difficult to even identify that, well, if you could use this as a title, no, we need to clarify it, and that's what this does.
I think this is an indication that our zoning process is healthy, you know, as these
It
things
is.
come up and they're
Yes.
not clearly identified, we go through and amend it. This is a proper amendment, I feel anyway, and the planning commission feels the same way.
Yep. They recommended approval without any modifications from the version that was presented to them, which is the same version, of course, you have here.
Is there a downside to this, an opposition to this? Anybody?
They'd be allowed unfettered now, I guess. So
Just
that
in
would-
business.
It'd be up to the market as to whether, how many fitness centers we'd have in these zones, I guess.
Yeah.
So not really.
And it's a free enterprise system, you
No.
know, and this is something that, you know, 20 years ago, and that, I can't say that I knew of a fitness center. So it shows changes in times. Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to this. I just
YMCA
wonder
is
if
the only
there's
thing I
any
can think of
concerns
that's
about
been
it.
around longer,
The-
you know, than YWCA.
The only thing I've heard, Commissioner Johnson, is that, you know, being the community center liaison, I mean, obviously, we don't want, because the city helps fund that, we put a lot of money and effort towards that facility. However, at the same time, you know, I'm also of the opinion that free enterprise, we've had fitness centers come and go, and, you know, in our community, and if people got a good idea, and if the community center isn't serving their needs, you know, great. And the community center will focus on what we do, and we'll do that well. And I've never been scared of competition, and, you know, from that aspect of it. So, yeah, definitely. That's the only thing that I've heard as far as any opposition to any of this, but. Yep.
Other questions or comments?
There was some discussion during the planning commission, and I think both Mayor Lindsay and Commissioner Corbin, yes, they were there, about in the general business zone, central general business, excuse me, which is generally speaking the downtown area, concerns about parking. But there was a robust discussion about that. You know, should we be concerned about that? There was a gentleman who spoke at the meeting who owns some facilities, and he testified that in many of those that he runs, there's not many cars there. They're early in the morning. They come and they go. And so after that discussion, the group didn't decide to make any changes based upon some of the things that were talked about at that time. As far as parking, when a use would come in, or a building permit, for example, for a use, if it was in the central general business, we wouldn't have to evaluate parking because it specifically says the general parking that's provided out here, they don't have to provide it on site. Now, if one would come out in another district where there are parking requirements, we would be required to look at the parking part of the ordinance and compare it to that proposal and try to interpret the best we can how many stalls would be needed based upon that particular use. And then it would be up to the enterprise being proposed to provide those, or if they couldn't, or if they wanted to reduce the number, they would have to come before the board for a variance, perhaps. You know, if they couldn't provide what was needed by the ordinance.
And that's under the 2 conditional uses, which are a part of this, so.
Right, 2 of them they'd have to come in
Yes,
anyway.
And so they would have to address that in those. So, you know, I have looked it over, and I feel very comfortable with, you know, where they are, and I'm glad that they're in there because it takes out the guesswork of, you know, well, would it fit under this, would it fit under that?
Gives better direction to
Clarifies it.
to our people who got to deal with this. So I'll make a motion that we approve first reading and set a date of hearing. What's that date, Jen?
April 1st.
April 1st
For
5:30.
At 5:30 or thereabouts. Ordinance number 1607, amend Appendix B zoning fitness facilities.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, authorize the mayor to sign task order number 6, DGR Engineering, True Shore Planning. Brad, would you want to address that?
Yes, sir. You should have in your packet the task order number 6, which outlines 2 major tasks that we anticipate working on for the True Shrimp, the facility and its arrival. At this point in time, the only thing we really want to do is a partial of the infrastructure analysis and planning to get some preliminary estimates on the cost of the equipment and materials so that we can apply for some grant funding. So we anticipate total cost to be around $7,000 for that. But it'd be covered as part of this, it'd be a partial of that first one at infrastructure analysis and planning. And that number came with discussions with Chad Rasmussen from DGR. They won't be able to get started on it for probably another week, and that'll probably put us outside of this first grant application window, but there's a possibility we can put our own in at a separate date, so.
So on this one here, and that, if we'd be looking at the infrastructure analysis and planning portion only.
Yes, and about half of that.
Okay. Would you want to put a dollar on that, or just leave it in there as up to?
I think we can go up to 7,000, and then if we need to go more than that, we'll come back to the commission.
Okay.
Can we do that though? Because that's not the agreement we have in front of us. If we're going to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement, the agreement we have in front of us is for $24,000.
Well, could we limit that agreement to 7,000, and then if we go beyond that, we could bring it back?
Can you do that by motion?
Yes.
Certainly.
Okay, so I'm just going to clarify, David, from my thoughts here. We could approve task order number 6 with a maximum expenditure limit of $7,000 at this point.
Yes, I believe that you can. Chad, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I suppose the other thing you could do, if I may just chime in, you could approve this subject to the modification of, and correct me, Brad, if I'm not looking at this right, but under the infrastructure analysis and planning portion where it says hourly estimate 14,000, you're saying right now that that would actually just be 7 at this point in time?
At this point in time.
So you could approve it contingent that this document be sent back to DGR, whomever drafted it, or whoever has the Word document, modify that down to 7, and then it would be consistent with both your motion and the document itself, which is what Jen...
You could make that motion as well. Contingent.
And what we're talking here, and that, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, and that is, in here in the 14, it would have been a very formal, but since we're looking at some EDA possible grant scenarios, if not recent in the future, they're looking more at an estimate on equipment rather than on a full-blown facility, for a substation.
And we could, with a little bit more time, we can have the plans stamped, everything done the way we need to do it for EDA, and have that sent in as a separate item. There wasn't enough time to get it done for this anticipated first application.
Okay. So then the motion on this would be that task order number 6 would be approved with a maximum cost at this point in time of $7,000.
If I may add, this is also
And this would become-
unbudgeted with funds to come from the electric fund cash balance.
Cash balance.
Correct, Brad? This is all electric.
Yes.
Okay.
Please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Number 3, authorize the mayor to sign the certificate of substantial completion, HydroClean LLC, Cured in Place Pipe, Project 2018-3. Brad or Chad, either one of you want to address this one?
Yes, I can talk about that, Your Honor.
Okay.
This is a typical and standard contract document. substantial completion date is supposed to be identified formally for the contract. That does a number of things, one of which is sets the date of the warranty and so on. So this project has been completed. You see the date of substantial completion was November 15th. We just didn't get around to, we've been talking with the contractor on a few different things, and so we're ready to proceed with this. And actually the final payment was on your bills already for this project as well. So I would recommend that this be approved. I have not signed it yet. I will sign this. With setting the date of substantial completion as November 15th. The work was done and all seems to be have been done satisfactorily. We haven't had any issues. We've reviewed all the after the lining, televising. That's a requirement to review, for them to televise it. We reviewed all those, and looks like it was done satisfactorily.
Can I add a few dollars and cents to that? We did budget for this project in 2018. We actually budgeted $435,000 in the sewer fund for this project. The bid came in, as you can see on the contractor's application, the bid came in at $205,193.95. Total cost based on unit prices, correct, is $214,238.95. And yes, you did just approve the final payment within this batch of bills.
The extra cost on that was we added a line where we had determined there was problems on southeast 5th Street, just between Parth and Lee. That's where we added that line. There was some pretty poor pipe there, and the contractor was able to accommodate. We had the bid item of that size pipe, so we were just able to extend it by units and get that line.
Is that Southeast 5th or 4th?
5th.
5th, it was 5th.
Yeah, down by the school,
Yeah, south of the school there.
Got it.
the old school, excuse me.
Yep. All right, questions or comments?
So this project eliminates some problem areas for us then?
It really helps with the I&I.
Good.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we authorize the mayor to sign certificate of substantial completion, Hydro Clean LLC, Cured in Place Pipe, CIPP, project 2018-3.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 4, bid number 883, set a bid date and construction of underground electric primary, secondary service and street lighting circuitry. Brad or Chad on this one?
You should have in your packet the advertisement for bids, and it's for the 16th day of April 2019 at 2 p.m. This is our standard upgrade project. This one's kind of a patchwork piece that kind of fills in some of the gaps between previous years' projects, and a fair amount of it's just underground. It's not doing the overhead underground conversion. There's some older wire that had a different insulation in it that didn't stand up as well, and it's starting to create faults, and so we need to replace that. We're having burn-offs and everything, so this will be replacing several of those areas and fixing that up. So
April 16th?
yes.
2 p.m.
I'll make a motion to approve bid number 883, set bid date for April 16th at 2 p.m. for construction of underground electric primary, secondary, service and street light circuitry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no public comment under announcements, and that the state is having their Highway 34 public open house at the Dakota Prairie Playhouse starting at 6 o'clock this evening. So if you have the ability in that, go up and hear what they have to say. Do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, we are now in executive session.